Good morning, United Nations. And allow me to start informally first by saying we had a great reception yesterday, and I came back home from this reception already with a clear expectation. These are going to be two really exciting days, because we went straight into the issues already yesterday in the evening, and there were a lot of discussions where I felt the dedication of all of you who are here, and I wanted to put this at the beginning of my welcoming here. But since the formal conference is starting right now, I wanted to ask you for forgiving me that I'm also a little bit formal at the beginning, and also paying you the respect that you all deserve. So let me start with Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen and colleagues, good morning. I wanted to welcome you. My name is Stefan Feller, and Anne-Marie Orla, Police Commissioner of the United Nations, Anne-Marie and I, we will be your conduit throughout the next 2 days. And without further ado, I wanted to say that I'm delighted to give the floor to Michael Freiherr von Ungern-Steinberg, the Director for Global Issues in the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to welcome you all. Thanks, Michael.
Madam Under-Secretary General Haag, Excellencies, Mr. Titov, Ms. Orla, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, I'm very happy to welcome you here in the Foreign German Office, and I'm very happy that we are organizing such an important event, because we actually really believe that multilateral peacekeeping is so important, and that the police segment in this peacekeeping is such an important part of it. To undermine our commitment and the commitment of the whole German government, the two ministers, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Westerwelle, and the Minister of Interior, Dr. Friedrich, will be speaking to you today and tomorrow. First of all, a very warm word of thanks to the United Nations and also to the Ministry of Interior for their commitment and expertise in organizing this event. It truly is a joint venture. Dear colleagues, your response, of course, is a very telling indicator for the significance of international police peacekeeping. We have over 200 participants from all continents, and frankly speaking, in the beginning, when we were planning this, I thought, well, the mark was 100. Well, we're at 200 now, and coming from 100 countries from all parts of the world, all regional groups, from countries that have been contributing police personnel, from countries that have been on the receiving end, from important international organizations from different parts of the world. And that's a great sign of where police the role of police in peacekeeping is going. And it also pays tribute, of course, to the 14,000 odd police officers, police staff that we have in the UN operations, which represents 15% of all uniformed UN peacekeepers. Dear colleagues, the fundamental analysis is pretty clear. UNPOL faces a significant deployment gap. Sufficient and qualified civilian police capacities need to be provided to the United Nations in order to enable the UN to contribute to the development of civilian capacities in countries torn by conflict. This conference will undoubtedly analyze peacekeeping from many different angles. But it will certainly also discuss very practical ways to strengthen international attention and make the available instruments yet more effective. In times of scarce resources, that's a truism. Effectiveness is an imperative for most actors. To finish, therefore, I would like to draw your attention to a seemingly technical proposal included in session 8 at the very end of this conference. Could a group of friends for international peacekeeping at the UN add value to our joint endeavor? From my own experience at the United Nations, and I spent 5 years there, and we have many group of friends at the United Nations, a group of friends often makes quite a valuable contribution because it creates a sense of common interest among its members. Groups of friends can address very practical issues in a flexible way and at short notice. You can have them meet in the so-called New York format, but you can also have them meet with representatives from capitals. So if you feel there's merit in looking at the creation of a group of friends, please raise your voice in the course of the next 2 days. You're sure to get German support. Thank you for your attention, and now I would call on Police Commissioner Fellner from the Federal Ministry of Interior to take the floor. Thank you very much.
Undersecretary General Lack, Excellencies, Assistant Secretary General Titov, Commissioner Oller, later on I will name you Anne-Marie as we usually talk to each other. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and distinguished friends. And thank you, Mr. Ungarn-Steinberg. This was food for thought, and we have an open-minded plan for this conference. It's meant to happen in sequences, and we hope that this is not, and we are sure that this is not an event, a political event of the day, but this is one, hopefully an important piece in an ongoing work where we are all dedicated to what police and peacekeeping means. And so, when I was asked a few months ago to participate in this endeavor here, as already was mentioned, we had no idea how much interest this conference would create. And I want to say it again, the Weltsaal is full. We have presence and expertise of almost 200 delegates from over 100 nations, member states. And we have in addition around 50 representatives from the United Nations, the African Union, the European Union, and representing the Association of Southeast Asian Nations from renowned universities and academic research institutions, non-governmental organizations, and I welcome a number of long-standing friends and police experts in this room that have formed this network for so long. So these are experts not only in the police, but in the area of the rule of law, and we will come to this issue certainly later on as well. It's not about the police only, but today it's about the police. I may say that Germany is highly committed to this conference and its success. As already mentioned, we will have 2 ministers who will address. His Excellency Minister Dr. Westerwelle will do it today at 11 a.m. So please bear with us. We try to be punctual in order to give prominence to this. And His Excellency Minister Dr. Friedrich will conclude and contribute to the conclusion tomorrow afternoon. But having done the German bit, first and foremost, it's about the United Nations. And I wanted to introduce the high-ranked delegation of the United Nations, high-ranked from headquarters and high-ranked from the field, providing expertise and telling us what we want to discuss, and being led by Undersecretary General Amira Haq, who has a busy timetable and who made it happen to come. and who has capacity to stay for the first session. So we need to be timely in order to have her also receiving what's coming under the moderation of Anne-Marie Orle. But first of all, I wanted to heartily welcome you and to give you the floor to address the floor. Thanks.
Your Excellency, Mr. von Ungen-Sternberg, the Director General of United Nations Affairs, and through you also to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Dr. Guido Westerwelle, who will be with us later, Mr. Stefan Feller, Commissioner, my fellow colleagues from the United Nations, Excellencies, distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen, and dear colleagues. A very warm welcome to all of you on the occasion of this high-level conference on international peacekeeping in the 21st century. At the outset, let me express my sincere appreciation to Foreign Minister Westerwelle and our German hosts for their hospitality in co-organizing this event. I would also like to thank all of you. The numbers, as we heard, swelled from 100 to 200. So I would like to thank all of you who have traveled from across the globe to be with us here today. In our daily lives, we often come across police officers maintaining order at a football match, directing traffic at busy intersections, or patrolling the streets and to maintain a safe and secure environment. Experiences of policing for people in post-conflict environments are drastically different. In fact, often there are few or sometimes no police officers walking the beat, no functioning emergency number to call, and no police station to report crimes to. It is in such challenging circumstances that United Nations police officers, men and women from almost 90 countries, are often asked to step in and to help. In Timor-Leste, where I served as the special representative of the Secretary General until June of this year, the United Nations police officers were sent in to restore and maintain law and order and strengthen the national capacity of policing following a crisis in 2006 in which the headquarters of the National Police of Timor-Leste disintegrated, as did special police units in several districts. The security situation was volatile and unstable. With the Timor-Leste police fractured and in disarray, United Nations police officers, many of you in the room here, with a mandate to provide interim law enforcement, performed policing operational duties on the front line. Thanks to the dedicated work of UNPOL officers working side by side with the Timor-Leste officers who did not leave their posts during the crisis, the security situation had improved drastically by the time I arrived in Timor-Leste in January 2010. And policing responsibility was gradually being reassumed by the Timorese police, district by district, across the country. I must add that the efforts of the Timorese leaders also played an important part in the gradual reduction in political tension and improvement in the security situation. In March 2011, policing responsibility in the last districts and overall command and control were handed over. And I must say, it was a very significant point for me in my career in the United Nations to see that shift of focus towards national police capacity building. It is my conviction that one of the most important contributions that the United Nations made in Timor-Leste, and one that is being made in many other post-conflict countries, where United Nations police officers are serving, is the transfer of knowledge and skills to the national police. And for the first time in United Nations peacekeeping, we recruited 19 civilian police advisors to provide additional capacity building to the Timor-Leste police in specialized areas to complement efforts by UN police officers. Ladies and gentlemen, United Nations police officers served with pride and dedication in some of the most challenging police assignments anywhere in the world. They perform increasingly complex tasks, ranging from actual policing duties of arresting criminals and preventing crime, providing advice and assistance on the reform of entire police services, supporting national security institutions in developing and implementing security plans for national elections, through to training and mentoring their national counterparts. Today, over 13,500 police officers serve in 12 peacekeeping operations and 7 special political missions, a major increase from just 2,400 in 1999. This rapid growth is not a cause for celebration, since it means that in too many corners of our planet, public order is not being maintained through homegrown solutions. At the same time, I believe that this is also a reflection of the comparative advantage of United Nations police, its international legitimacy, and its recognition as an impartial partner to host countries. As United Nations police numbers expand and as tasks evolve, we need to do our utmost to support our men and women in the field. It is one of the Department of Field Support's most important responsibilities to ensure that all our missions are fully equipped to deliver on every aspect of their policing mandate. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon's 5-year action agenda prioritizes the building of a more secure world by innovating and building on core business. Policing is certainly a core function of United Nations peacekeeping, and the Secretary-General has called for an enhanced partnership with member states. In my view, this partnership between the United Nations and member states in support of United Nations police requires the following 5 elements. The first element is a clear doctrine and strategic guidance. We at the United Nations are working hard to tackle existing doctrinal and capacity gaps, Some of these gaps were identified by the Secretary General's Independent Advisory Board on Civilian Capacity, which I took part in. The United Nations Police Division, represented here by Assistant Secretary General Titov and Commissioner Anne-Marie Orla, is developing a strategic guidance framework to standardize the role of police in peacekeeping. The framework will ensure more consistent and standardized approaches to the provision of public safety, police reform, and support to host state police. The second element is a more professional and diverse United Nations Police Service. We require quality over sheer numbers, and we require police with specialized skills. This afternoon, you will hear about such new, innovative models of deployment when countries second teams of police officers, well-versed in a special police specialism, for example, to investigate sexual and gender-based violence or to counter organized crime. We need member states to provide more police planners, criminal intelligence analysts, integrated border management specialists, public order management experts, French-speaking officers, and police leaders. From my decades of experience serving in the field, in development agencies, and in peacekeeping and political missions, I am of the view that what we need is more trainers, mentors, and those with experience in capacity building. UN Police Advisor Anne-Marie Orla is leading the UN effort to attract more female police officers to the UNPOL. As we speak, there are 1,432 female officers. This is 9.9% of the total serving the UN. We aim to more than double this proportion to at least 20% by 2014. The deployment of women police officers has far-reaching impact. In Timor-Leste, where domestic violence is the second most reported crime after assault, abused women felt more comfortable reporting crimes to women national police officers in the Vulnerable Persons Unit who were being mentored by women UNPOL officers. In Liberia, where we sent an all-female police unit, we saw similar positive effect of increase in abuse cases being reported. I urge all member states to consider sending more female police officers. The third element is a more nimble, rapidly deployed police service. Together with the Department of Peacekeeping Operations, my department is working to give effect to the global field support strategy by embracing a modularization approach. Predefined elements of logistical support that can be rapidly deployed to the field. The idea is that a police academy, a police station, or a command and control center can look fairly similar in post-conflict settings. The modular approach will improve the speed and predictability of police deployment, and it will allow us to secure the safety of personnel, fulfill the mandate effectively, and maximize efficiencies. The standing police capacity in the UN Global Service Center in Brindisi is filling any gap that may arise, be it in new missions or in the course of changing police requirements. The fourth element is enhanced international policing cooperation with regional organizations. We hope to work closely with Interpol, regional organizations, and development institutions, and other actors in the police peacekeeping field through joint assessments, joint planning, joint implementation, and joint funding streams. In doing so, we will reinforce each other's work and deliver more with less. My colleague, Assistant Secretary General Titov, will elaborate more on this later. Finally, UN police peacekeeping requires strong support in your capitals, in New York and in the field. An international alliance in support of UNPOL will help us ensure adequate funding and human resources and tackle the challenges I have just identified head on. Dear colleagues, much remains to be done to give United Nations Police all it needs to perform at its full potential and deliver on the far-reaching mandates given to them. We need more police officers with specialized skill sets who can transfer them to national police officers. We need civilian experts to work alongside police officers. Numbers of female police officers must increase, and the geographic pool of police contributing countries needs to expand. And we need your support in keeping the issue of United Nations police peacekeeping on the radar of your decision makers in your respective countries. Let me once again commend the German government for its contribution to the work of our organization, its contribution of police officers to serve as UN police officers, and for supporting this timely discussion. I wish this conference every success. And now I would like to tell you that since the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon also accords such high priority to this, that we will have the occasion now to listen to his message to this conference. Thank you very much.
His Excellency Guido Westerwelle, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany, distinguished officials from governments and intergovernmental organizations, experts in the field of international peace and security, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I thank Germany for organizing this conference, and I thank so many participants for gathering on this important issue. United Nations police work in some of the toughest environments in the world. They serve communities, they bring stability, they inspire trust. I have seen our brave men and women, police, help establish the rule of law and pave the way for lasting progress. Their services are in high demand. 13,500 UN police officers from almost 90 countries currently serve under the United Nations flag. As our numbers have grown, so have our responsibilities. UN police are adapting to meet emerging threats, and they train local officers so that positive change takes a deep root in society. The United Nations is developing a strategic guidance framework for police peacekeeping. It will provide a common reference for international police peacekeepers. I appreciate the support of member states, but we need to do more. We especially need more female police. Women police can more easily earn the trust of local women. That means more victims come forward and we can stop more crime. I count on all of you to help us meet the peace and security challenges of the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Under-Secretary General Haag. I may add, thank you, Your Excellency, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Those who know me know that I'm preparing things by having a script, but those who know me know also that I tend not exactly to follow the script. So there's one issue that's not on my script that I wanted to mention, however. And I may start with, this was not my idea. When this idea was born, I was discussing gender issues of female police officers still being in Sarajevo, heading the European Union police mission with Samra over there. She will have a role in this conference. This idea also was not born by two ministers or by an Under-Secretary General, if I may, if you allow me to say. This idea was born by people who are in this room and around this room today, from headquarters in New York, staffers in headquarters in New York, and police officers, diplomats, and civil servants in the Ministry of Interior and the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs several months ago. And they asked me whether or not I wanted to join. The dedication to the issue that we are talking about is evidenced by that their idea quickly rose through the ranks and generated enthusiasm, first and foremost on the side of both the federal government of Germany and the United Nations leadership, and looking again towards this unprecedented response that this idea had. This dedication of these people, you see, because they make yourself comfortable. They were at the reception desk yesterday. They have no voice here, but they want to do what they do because they're deeply convinced that this is what it is about. We have something to say. The police and experts in rule of law have something to say, and I'm just the point person. And it's an honor and a pleasure to represent those in this room and all over the world who do this. So I'm very, very positive we will meet both your expectations in delivering and to continue to deliver, and the quality aspect certainly is one of them. I need, though we are pretty much almost in time, 10 minutes longer, but I need to just ask you to bear with me for a few housekeeping remarks. One of them is, I hope that the simultaneous translators, the interpreters that are in the room, that are making it possible that we have a conference in English, Deutsch, Français, and Espanol, that I have lived up to their expectation, like we all did, to speak slowly, precisely, making breaks, cutting them, as the Americans would say, some slack, because they want to make it happen that you understand and can participate. So I call on all of us to speak slowly, precisely, in short sentences, and giving time in between. We have time. And we have social events. If we are tired at the end of the day, it's for a good reason. The second point is we have prepared a welcome package that I see on some of these tables with some documents, including, for example, the agenda, the most updated agenda. And in addition to that, what I hope that you will find it useful, we have a list that will be passed around through my colleagues here in course of the next 2 days, where you should please add your email address. This conference is videographed. It will be documented. We will present documents in support of the United Nations, but we want to give these documents to you. So we will do that through the official chain, but we all know what happens if you send something through the chain of the permanent representation trickling down. You might not get it, but you deserve to have it. So we also want to distribute it directly to you, because you are the experts in the room. We have a lot of work ahead throughout these 2 days. This agenda is ambitious. I really hope that we keep you on those issues, and the riverboat tour on the Spree is also meant to keep you focused on the second day, frankly speaking, because we need you, and you will enjoy that. We have the, I may say, daunting task that moderators, presenters, panelists, and I call on all of you engaging in discussions to come straight to the point, not to explain too much, focusing on the message or the question, the topic that you want to have, so that we have maximum space for those discussions that we want to see. So moderators will make sure we stay within the time frame, and there will be opportunity to further deepen discussions throughout the evenings. Lastly, I wanted to say Berlin in October is brimming with peacekeeping issues. We just set the start. This 2 days conference on United Nations Police in Peacekeeping is the first event in a sequence of 3, where at the beginning of next week there will be a workshop of the so-called Challenges Forum, and this will address fundamental issues. How is peacekeeping looking like in 2025? What are the challenges? What are the needs? Where do we need to adapt? Where do we need to develop? And in as much as this process would generate input for how to design policing, I'm very, very sure, and I can assure you, I will also personally contribute to, that the input of this conference will be put into that conference. And last but not least, another week later, there will be a conference organized by the German Center for International Peacekeeping, the ZIF, being in the room here, where Under-Secretary General Latsou will head a considerable delegation of police, military, and policy expertise of the United Nations on issues of military and police, or police and military aspects of peacekeeping. So we have a dense package, and also there, that what we take from you will be injected. So your engagement in this conference is presenting your unique chance. You will be heard, and we have a chance supporting the police division, supporting Anne-Marie, Commissioner Euler, supporting Assistant Secretary General Titov, and supporting Under-Secretary General Hack in their efforts of meeting nowadays expectations on police in peacekeeping. So Anne-Marie, Commissioner Euler, we go down here, we leave this podium for you, because there is no rest for the wicked. We will start working now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Feller, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. I am, as you have heard, the United Nations Police Advisor, but before joining UN, I was a county commissioner in Sweden, and I have been spending more than 20 years in the Swedish police. I warmly welcome all of you to this conference, and I thank the German government for hosting and supporting this event. I am very much looking forward. Imagine 2 days with just police matters. And this is a very rare occasion to be able to have so many executives in one room, and being able to seek your inputs, your advice, your guidelines, your ideas into the vision for the UN police in the 21st century. I think we all in this room share interest for policing in general, international policing in particular, but we also share the jet lag, I think. So I think what would be good is to keep engaged, make sure you don't fall asleep. And don't be shy. This is a very, very good opportunity for us to share ideas, discuss how we can bring the agenda on policing forward. Our first session today will cast light on the evolution of the UN police peacekeeping in the past 10 to 20 years. We will talk about changes, challenges, and opportunities offered by our operational environment. We will talk about why international police peacekeeping matters and what difference international police peacekeeping can make at home in our police services and societies. We will hear today from two distinguished speakers who have devoted most of their professional lives to peace and security, and in some way have helped shape modern peacekeeping as we know it. First, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Bill Dirch. He is the director of Stimson's Future of Peace Operations program. Dr. Dirch is recognized scholar of peace and disarmament. In the recent past, he served as project director for the landmark Panel on United Nations Peace Operations of August 2000, or as we better know it, the Brahimi Report. Dr. Dirch is a regular contributor to projects focused on improving the effectiveness of peacekeeping at headquarters and in the field. He has taught courses on international organization and peacekeeping at the School of Advanced International Studies, Johns Hopkins University, at the School of Foreign Service, Georgetown University, and the Elliott School of International Affairs, George Washington University. Please, Dr. Dirch, the floor is yours.
Is anyone seeing PowerPoint yet? Yes? Oops. Okay. So. Yeah, I thought it was going to be loaded up already. No. Technical difficulties, 1 second.
Which one is it? Building policing? No.
Yeah.
That's one. Which one? Presentation?
Presentation. No. Open that out.
This one?
Open this out. I want to see
Oh,
it.
okay.
Here.
This one?
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right, well, you can see why appropriate technology is so important for peacekeeping operations. Thank you very much, Commissioner Orler, Mr. Director General, Assistant Secretary Titov, Undersecretary General Hawk, Commissioner Orler, Commissioner Feller, ladies and gentlemen. distinguished heads of delegations, it's an honor to be here to address such a senior and distinguished group of professionals with such experience in international police peacekeeping. My role is to add a bit of background on the evolution of police peacekeeping in the 21st century and to discuss some of the findings of Stimson's most recent report, which is on what I want to see it.
Yeah, there we go. You can only see there.
Got it. Okay, fine. Right. In the 21st century. All right. So, for the United Nations, the 21st century began in 1999. In June, with the UN Interim Assistance Mission in Kosovo, established by Security Council Resolution 1244, and in October, with the UN Transitional Administration in East Timor, Resolution 1729. These were the first UN executive policing missions. With these missions, authorized UNPOL increased from about 2,000 to 6,000 almost overnight. The civilian police unit, as it was then known at UN headquarters, grew by about 50% in the same time to 11 personnel. The first special or rapid response units were deployed to these missions, 10 units to Kosovo, 2 to Timor. These missions police were tasked with law enforcement while building themselves and their local counterparts' capacities simultaneously. The August 2000 Brahimi report, as mentioned, at the behest of the panel's police expert, Mr. Richard Monk, who's with us today, called for a doctrinal shift to integrate UN police into rule of law teams, noting that nowhere do police work alone. They are part of a broader system of judgment and punishment or exoneration. In 2007, DPKO shifted sharply toward integration with the creation of ORULSI, and just last month, the SG's Policy Committee created a new global focal point for police justice and corrections at UN headquarters, where DPKO and the UN Development Program will collaborate in developing policy, procedure, and support for UN missions in these areas. Before moving on to the impact study results, I want to say a bit more about two of the bullets on this slide, the police division and formed units. After its startling increase to 11 between 1990 and 2000, the police division doubled again to 20 in 2002 and remained there through 2007. In 2007, a number of posts for police specialists were created in DPKO's new integrated operational teams. In 2008, they became part of the headcount of the police division. In 2006, the division was authorized by the General Assembly to hire 27 personnel for the UN's first standing police capacity, as Under Secretary General Hawk mentioned. This grew out of a recommendation of the Secretary General's high-level panel on threats, challenges, and change in 2004, as confirmed by the 2005 World Summit. The SPC first deployed in 2007 to set up the new policing operation in Chad and the Central African Republic, or MINURCAT. Almost immediately, the SPC also began to field advisory teams to existing missions and continues to do so, I think with great positive effect. The SPC moved to Brindisi in 2009-2010 and was enlarged to 41 personnel. This next chart shows cumulative UN police deployed as of January 31st of each calendar year since 1999. Roughly 2,000 more personnel are authorized than are deployed in any given year. The number of FPUs deployed, which is the lower segment in the chart, has grown steadily since complex UN peace operations began to surge in number in 2004. FPUs made up 54% of UNPOL deployments as of January this year and have been the majority of UN police deployments since 2011. Added to this chart, you'll see toward the bottom, is a line that indicates the relationship of UN headquarters policing support to numbers of police deployed. Despite the growth of police division in the last 12 years, headquarters support has barely been able to keep pace with the field and has never been greater than 0.5% of the total number of people deployed. The division has the logistical and related support of the Division of Field Support, of course, but in most police-specific facets of its operations, UN police are supported by a thin blue line indeed. Turning to the results of Simpson's study on police justice and corrections impact in the field, this work was undertaken with the cooperation of Orolsi and with the critical support of police components in particular and personnel in MONUSCO, UNMIL, UNIPSL, and UNIOGBIS, and for that we thank them a great deal. We conducted field interviews and reviewed hundreds of UN and other documents to support our analysis and conclusions. Terminology in impact evaluation can be confusing, but it's important. The UN Peacebuilding Support Office has a hierarchy of strategy, inputs, outputs, sector-wide and system-wide outcomes that it uses. But we have used the terminology from the Network of Networks on Impact Evaluation. Yes, there is such an entity. And that includes the UN, the OECD, and the World Bank's evaluation groups. And they recommend parsing impact into short-term and long-term. We define short-term impact for our study as the outcome of mission work that persists at least while the mission is deployed. Since most of the missions we examined are still deployed, most of the impact that we found must, by definition, be considered short-term. This chart and the next are not in the study, but reflect notional depictions of the environment that most missions face when they deploy, and then as the next chart as a changed environment when they depart. The chart depicts the notional prominence and relationships of key issues on the ground, and the larger symbols are more pressing issues, and where one symbol overlaps another, the more it dominates that other issue. Symbols that don't touch are disconnected from one another in the immediate post-conflict environment, which I suppose means that political violence and crime should be touching. The chart does depict political violence and crime as the dominant issues in that environment. Both of them overshadow, really trample on human rights, good governance, and they diminish public security and the formal economy. Public services may be non-existent as a result of conflict or provided in some form by entities other than the central government, including local communities and international aid providers. Expectations for peacekeeping and peacebuilding are on the whole too high, which is why this chart depicts symbols that suggest the need for improvement but not perfection in these various areas. Although missions generally focus first on reducing political violence and crime, in order to increase public security, I'm suggesting that the most important issue from which attention to these other three items naturally flows is increasing respect for human rights. Building that requires lower violence, reduced crime, better governance, and better governance helps the formal economy, which generates revenue for government and basic service delivery, and that in turn enhances public security further. Moving on to the results of the study. Complex peacebuilding missions function in environments that they cannot fully control. Mandates handed down by the Security Council may be vague or open-ended without well-defined boundaries. Host state politics, despite a peace agreement, may entangle a mission and delay mandate implementation. National buy-in or ownership of peacebuilding goals may be uncertain and almost always contested. The size, the terrain, or the climate of the operating area may frustrate logistics or spread the mission very thin. Implementing partners may be difficult to work with, yet critical to mission achieving anything more than training and advice. There are also issues with how UN headquarters and missions handle knowledge, both in reporting and in building institutional memory. Memory remains weak because procedures for building it either don't exist or are not followed. Beyond external conditions limiting mission impact are a set of internal limiting factors as laid out in this slide and the next. Leaders with experience in police, justice, or corrections reform in their own countries, let alone a post-conflict setting, are rather scarce. States are unreimbursed for individual police officers they second to missions and have little incentive to part with specialists, including specialists with talent or experience in teaching their specialties, which are very much needed at home. And especially given that formed units are at least reimbursed at the same rate as military units to the governments that send them. Finally, too often it's assumed that the ability to do a task implies the ability to train others to perform the task, or that the personality required for successful one-on-one mentoring is the same as doing the task. One analyst of international police development efforts has observed that the expectation seems to be that skills will be transferred by osmosis or the mere proximity of mentor to mentee. The UN has particular difficulty finding sufficient police or other personnel who speak the mission language, especially in Francophone missions, let alone local languages. Interpreters may be needed to talk with host state counterparts or to the public, which makes effective advising and mentoring difficult, but also especially affects crisis response. For example, by formed police units who deal directly with a disturbance or other crowd control settings. Language deficits compound the problems that rapid turnover and poor handover planning create in building and sustaining critical relationships and respect. Too often, each new occupant of a post or a function in a mission has to push the same rock up the same hill as his or her predecessor because rotation rates in seconded positions may be high, relationships must be rebuilt, local counterparts know that their UN guide will likely not be around very long, that they will likely be of a different nationality from one cycle to the next, and that knowledge transfer from the predecessor to the successor will be low. UN operations also face a fundamental problem in attempting to convince host state counterparts that accountability is a basic requirement of a well-functioning criminal justice system when accountability for criminal behavior within UN operations is low to non-existent, especially with uniformed secondees. In evaluating components development work, capacity building, we used a breakout chart created by the OECD for evaluating the development work in general, divided into institutional and individual capacity building and institutional and individual integrity development. Generally, UN missions and their components do best on individual capacity building and less well in other areas, which we will relate in the following annotated stoplight charts. Green means that there's at least short-term positive impact regardless of political and environmental circumstances. Yellow, you have impact where favorable circumstances exist, and red, impact is rare regardless of circumstance, based on what we have seen. So I hope you can read this on the screens. I think these should be made available after the presentation for everyone to take home. Individual capacity development efforts have had the greatest successes where training programs have been intensive and of at least 1 year's duration, combining classroom and field training. With favorable conditions, police vetting and strategic planning, and judicial and corrections training, mapping, and system expansion have also been feasible and favorable. Capacity building efforts that do not generate much impact include short-term police training, trying to retrain sitting judges, or training so-called volunteer prison staff. On the institutional side, missions have not engaged much with the informal justice sector, although community watch programs in Liberia affiliated with the Liberian police have enjoyed a certain amount of success. Regarding integrity, the element that keeps a newly developed institution glued together, missions have been able to instill an appreciation for personal and professional integrity that survives under routine circumstances but tends to dissolve under crisis. Routine fiscal propriety or resistance to corruption has been harder to instill in individuals and even harder in institutions. Some policy transparency has been achieved under favorable conditions, as has legal reform, usually after several years of effort. On the operations side, in police operations and operational support to state police, UNPOL, once fully deployed, can and have contributed to public security by their presence and their actions. They can also readily support host state planning and exercises. Where conditions are favorable, as they were in Haiti in 2006-2007, missions may work with host state police against violent criminal gangs or team up to implement border management and security plans. In the minimal impact category, we place most formed unit operations, unfortunately, which continue to be undertrained, under-equipped, generally poorly coordinated, slow to deploy, and often suffering language barriers, as I noted, with the host public. Corrections officers have often taken upon themselves to address water and food shortages in prisons where they are assigned as advisors. These tactical solutions do not require high-level approaches and can go forward regardless of other constraining factors. With government support, justice and corrections components can team up to provide logistical and other support to mobile courts to bring review of detention cases on site. In most places where UN operations deploy, as many of you know, 70 to 90% of detainees in the prison system are pretrial and perhaps even pre-charge. And of course, the more effective a police component becomes, the higher that percentage is going to grow unless the courts work. Strategic solutions to prison overcrowding, efforts at infrastructure development for courts and prisons have had some success. But even so, they can move forward under favorable conditions, but in most mission conditions, even favorable is difficult, resulting in design, construction quality, and timeliness problems. So thinking ahead, on police, strategic guidance is a starting point. It is under development. You will hear much more about that in session 3. Even where guidance is in place, however, the problem of finding experienced curriculum developers, institution builders, experts on police internal affairs, and so forth will remain. Recruiting expert staff on the open mission as civilians is an innovation from the last 2 or 3 years, but recruiting those folks can take 12 to 18 months. Pre-cleared rosters of individual experts is one option. A larger UN standing capacity in police development is another, as is close cooperation with the UN Development Program and other institutions focused on the longer term who have greater programmatic funds at their disposal. In the judicial and legal advisory areas, missions come up against the limited capacity of formal justice institutions and widespread local reliance on informal or community justice, 80 to 90% of dispute resolution done in those venues. Missions are beginning to grapple with this issue, and the trade-offs between working with what exists and such forum tendencies, for example, to discriminate against or disempower women, is a problem. In the formal justice system, the quest for independence of judicial institutions from politics can create its own problems if the head of a judicial system chooses not to cooperate with or otherwise obstruct consensus-based reforms. Prisons, everyone's last priority, every government's last priority, and very few exceptions. So there are some dilemmas to resolve there with the police. As to future mission strategy, it is common to discuss each mission case as unique and to stress needs for local buy-in or ownership, but this may not be enough. If each country situation has its own complex dynamics, and only local action will produce embedded results, then the international community's approach to restoring peace and public security may need to be rethought. One approach to limiting what outside intervention tries to accomplish with limited tools, time, and money is to focus on setting local bounds for policy and practice that are consistent with international norms and standards, and then to let the local parties and their people sort out the details themselves. This approach may still require substantial changes to adapt to those standards, while becoming more effective at what local institutions do, but it places the initiative where it belongs and must ultimately remain in the hands of those who will live with the consequences. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dutch, and especially for that little drama you put on in the beginning with all your papers. And this was a start to lay the foundation for the 2 days to discuss looking at UN policing in perspective and where we are today. It also struck me that, especially in the UN and maybe in the police environment, we're very good at using acronyms. And if we are using something and not explaining what it is, please raise your hand so we explain what it is, so we all are clear on these different acronyms. Our second speaker today is Mr. Dmytro Titov, United Nations Assistant Secretary General for the Rule of Law and Security Institutions in the Department of Peacekeeping Operations, DPKO. Assistant Secretary General Titov has worked in peacekeeping since joining the UN in 1991, overseeing a number of operations, beginning with Angola and Mozambique. In 1998, he became the director of the Africa Division in DPKO, and in this capacity, he helped set up new peacekeeping operations in the region. In 2007, Mr. Dmytro Titov was appointed as the United Nations Assistant Secretary General for the Rule of Law and Security Institutions in the newly established office with the same name, OROLSI. OROLSI demonstrates UN's holistic approach to re-establishing systems of justice and reinforcing security. Mr. Titov, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you, Director General, USG HAC, for your introduction. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, friends. Many of you are true friends for many years. On behalf of the Office of Rule of Law and Security Institutions, first and foremost, I applaud the initiative of the German government to convene this meeting, and also our friends from the police division. But we also have to remember that whatever we do at conferences like those, we are supporting and applauding men and women in police uniform who serve cause of peace globally, especially under the UN flag. We are grateful for their dedication and sacrifice. My special pleasure to share podium with Dr. Bill Dirch, who has been associated with our office, with DPKO for many years. Bill, I listened very carefully what you were saying. Many of your suggestions have a tremendous strategic and practical value for us, but for the audience, I can tell you, be critical, as Professor Dirch is, but it is not always so bad as he described. We are grateful for you to be here with us. Today, the United Nations comprises far more, and it is actually the largest expeditionary police service in the world. The organization has deployed more than 13,500 police officers today. The mandated strength is much larger than that. And those police officers are coming from over 90 countries, serving in 19 UN operations. The number of UN police deployed may have reached its historical peak, but the complexity of the task has not. This conference presents an excellent occasion to discuss how we can all work and project into the future and do it together in order to ensure that men and women in uniform provide the best for the UN policing. They have to be well prepared to maximize their impact in the name of international peace and security and the UN Charter. We have gathered in Berlin to consider how we could acquire the necessary skills to effectively meet the demands of the increasing challenges of the 21st century. Last month in New York, all the world's governments affirmed the rule of law as a central element to all UN work when they gathered for a high-level meeting of the General Assembly on the rule of law. The Secretary General Ban Ki-moon summoned up the deliberation, and I quote, "We know that strengthening the rule of law consolidates three pillars of the United Nations: peace, development, and human rights. Justice is not an abstract concept. It is a voter registration card, a governance contract with the people, the badge of policemen who inspires confidence among the population," end quote. In other words, in the rule of law area, the police constitute the front line. They are the most visible and the most exposed to adversary among law enforcement agencies. They are the gatekeepers of justice, the guardians of public security, and protectors. When police are deployed by the United Nations, they usually enter an environment where law and order has collapsed or has been considerably deteriorated, where security and human rights are under threat, where the national police have often been involved in the conflict, one way or another, where police infrastructure, physical and institutional, has deteriorated, and where police morale is often terribly, terribly low. But you, many of you sitting in this hall, did it again and again in Sierra Leone and Salvador almost 20 years ago, and today in Liberia and Libya. Having just visited Côte d'Ivoire, personally, I saw personally how much is being done by UN police officers in the heart of Africa. They should be proud of that. You know that when a country's own police force fails to keep people safe, to counter serious organized crime, or to establish legitimacy, this generates profound resentment, even fear, and require extraordinary effort to heal and improve. In the early stages of this process, UN police usually plays dual role. First and foremost, they promote safety and security, but they also lay down foundations for institution building and development, very often together with our partners. These efforts are critical to help national police regain professionalism and trust of the public. This means building a culture of service, community interaction, citizen protection, while fostering all rule of law institutions. Be mindful, for us, rule of law is not an abstract element. It has a very special meaning which is rooted into accountability, transparency, and democratic development. The process of institution building and training very often goes in parallel with improvements of justice and corrections. To create the foundation for the rule of law, the public must be confident that criminals will not return to streets in a matter of days and that human rights are not abused. They must also be confident that political opponents or simple criminal suspects are not locked up for months, if not years, without trial, and that the justice chain is functional. As I mentioned at the outset, the UN has police officers from almost 90 countries to navigate among different approaches, different backgrounds for so many nations participating in UN peacekeeping. The UN Police Division in the Department of Peacekeeping Operations is developing strategic guidance framework on international police peacekeeping. I hope that you will be able to discuss that important document or its draft later on. In the past, a UN police officer was simply thrown to any assignment, from the physical protection of victims of genocide to creation of high-grade policy papers. But very often, monitoring and reporting would suffice. Today, our operational and legislative base is much stronger, as are the skills of UN police officers. We have developed a course to train police mentors, to work with national counterparts. The DPKO inaugural class of UN police planners actually graduated this year, after the department has developed the world's first template for planning future international police operations. Another example, to prevent and investigate sexual gender-based crime in post-conflict environments, the UN police has run several regional courses to train new trainers. As a result, 25 states have also conducted their own courses built on the UN approach. This has created a pool of almost 6,000 investigators and advisors who are ready for deployment. Through the UN Police Division Special Section for Selection and Recruitment, we are doing more and more to target our recruitment process. This includes specialized vacancies issued at the headquarters level, the mapping of skills needed for each mission. This is why we sort of needed you, member states. We need you to deliver us serious, well-trained experts who have specialist skills for each country environment we're serving. This ranges from experts in public order management to criminal intelligence, from officers dealing with administrative matters to organized crime. UN Police Advisor Orler will speak about this subject in detail later in the conference. To facilitate the acquisition of much-needed skills, we want to explore with you at this meeting a new model of deployment. One way would be for member states to second specialized teams of experts. Such teams could be well prepared in advance to produce high impact on the ground, about which Professor Dirge was talking earlier. In this, we can draw on the examples of, for example, Norway, Canada, and the United States, which provided teams of experts to work with national police in Haiti. The Norwegian project alone generated over 30 new instructors and more than 250 special investigators within the Haiti National Police. The United Nations hopes that many of you will consider establishing and seconding to the United Nations team of experts which could be drawn from one country or regional. This is particularly important as we are planning to increase our contributions in the Sahel region, Somalia, Libya, and the Greater Middle East. In addition to new, enhanced skills, the United Nations deserves to have a global system of training, focusing on serving international operations. Simultaneously, the constantly evolving operational situations should reflect DPKO's learning and doctrinal foundations on police peacekeeping. Furthermore, our whole organization requires to urgently update its technical means and methods, and to say it bluntly, it should modernize itself. The national training centers, many exist in your countries, should be linked in one network, working under one doctrine. And we welcome the proposal to create the group of friends, which was outlined in the Director General's statement. Ladies and gentlemen, contemporary world faces a range of complex challenges, from corruption, organized crime, and cyber terrorism, to trafficking of drugs, arms, and people. It faces intolerable violence and extreme ideologies. These challenges call for experts who can provide strategic, effective, and targeted responses. In West Africa, we are trying a novel approach to fight drugs, trafficking, and organized crime, initiated by the PKO and actually by Commissioner Hughes, who is present with us today. This initiative is called West Africa Coast Initiative. It was developed together with ECOWAS, the International Criminal Police Organization, and Interpol, and many other entities. It focuses on 4 countries: Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, the system is already functional, is well equipped, and specialized transitional crime unit, national transitional crime unit, is up and running. In Liberia is only establishing this transitional crime unit through creation of a management board. And Guinea-Bissau has trained its own transitional crime unit staff. The West African Coastal Initiative has shown what we can achieve through a dedicated effort in one region. Visiting Côte d'Ivoire again a couple of days ago, I discussed with the representatives of the national government, Interpol, and UNODC how to launch this vital project in Côte d'Ivoire, perhaps next year. We also agreed to encourage donors to increase contribution on this strategic but vital front. I'm very glad to announce to you that our police division is currently holding very preliminary discussions in East Africa to create a similar approach. Ladies and gentlemen, another theme of ours is, with all our perceived or natural weaknesses at this stage, UN peacekeeping has unique advantages. The organization can deploy rapidly in the most hostile places, and together with our colleagues from the Department of Field Support, we demonstrated that by establishing very rapidly our small mission in Damascus, Syria. We have ever-increasing expertise in both training and doctrine, and the United Nations can engage government politically on sensitive issues such as security and human rights. Not the least, we have the legitimacy of the General Assembly and the Security Council behind our back. Peacekeeping operations cannot, however, and should not remain deployed for decades. What is required is to build and strengthen national rule of law institutions from the outset of any mission. For this, both the sense of national ownership and partnerships are needed. One critical special partnership lies within the UN family itself. DPQ and the United Nations Developmental Programme have jointly taken on the role of the global focal point to deal with police, justice, corrections, to address post-conflict and other crises. We are very grateful that Assistant Secretary General Ryan is with us today, and he will most probably talk about the contribution of this new global point as we expected. Altogether, the global point will coordinate responses to requests from countries who need knowledge, capacity, and advice in the 3 areas I described: policing, justice, and correction. Another critical partnership has been established between the United Nations and regional organizations. I am delighted that today we have among us representatives of both the African Union and the European Union. These are 2 most critical partners in UN peacekeeping operations. I hope that this conference will lead us to yet more partnerships with regional actors. Let me take a moment to acknowledge our friends from the African Union for their outstanding work in Darfur and Somalia. The UN supported preparations for these deployments. It has been supporting the conduct of operations, and we will continue to work very closely with African partners in planning and conduct of AMISOM and UNAMID. But we are also closely interacting on policing with colleagues from the European Union more generically and with NATO. Ladies and gentlemen, the outstanding contribution of our major providers, Bangladesh, Jordan, India, Nepal, Senegal, Pakistan, and Nigeria, to name only first 7 of them, is well documented. Yet we also know that our host country, Germany, has excellent specialists on fighting organized crime. We do know that France is a leader in public order management. The United Kingdom has world-class experts on counterterrorism. Each and every police service in Europe is a benchmark of quality in the world of police ranking. And yet, only about 5% of UN police officers come from the countries of the European Union. And not too many police experts are coming from other countries representing the Northern Tier. Today, I appeal to the governments to make more officers available, more officers with highly skilled police professionals. They should serve within the United Nations. Their participation will be critical. Their contribution will give you an extra value nationally because it contributes also to the security of your countries, as this is a global mission for all of us. In addition, after serving in a UN operation, your police officers will bring home unique operational and cross-cultural experience. Over the next 2 days, we will seek your views on how to strengthen UN police to meet the needs of the 21st century. We need a vision and long-term policy, and we need special structure to support UN policing from the political angle and operational. That's why I once again welcome the suggestion of creating the Group of Friends. I trust that you will be bold in your deliberations. You will be strategic and frank in sharing with us your aspirations about what is needed, about the right capacities which the new challenges demand of all of us. As the former German Chancellor Willy Brandt, who, by the way, had very special relations with Berlin, once said, and I quote, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." This is our task. Danke schön. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ASD Titov. Although the two moderators are Swedish and German, we are slightly behind the schedule. And I would propose that we save the questions for now, as both Dr. Dutch and ASD Titov will be throughout the conference, so we might be able to come back to questions.